Okay, hello everyone and welcome to our Healthy Living Live. I am Tracy Marsh. I'm a National Vice President with Arbonne International, but my role on this live tonight is as someone who has walked through autoimmune disease with a loved one. And I also want to ask the questions that each of you might have so that you can be empowered. We have a great panel with us tonight, and each of us are going to talk for just a short amount of time, and everybody on this live tonight has been affected by autoimmune disease in one way or another, either by walking with someone or experiencing it themselves. So autoimmune disease is having a massive impact, and over 50 million people have been diagnosed with some form here in the US. That number keeps growing up. It's very possible and actually probable that you or someone you know and love will be diagnosed with an autoimmune disorder. The names of autoimmune diseases are really familiar. There's Crohn's, ulcerative colitis, Hashimoto's, there's thyroid disorders, psoriasis, rheumatoid arthritis, eczema, multiple sclerosis, inflammatory bowel disease, just to name a few. So I wanted to bring these four people together to share their stories and their expertise. And we each will talk with you for about 5 to 7 minutes and share what we know with you. We want to touch on the why of autoimmune disease, the basis of the Autoimmune Protocol, which we're going to call for short AIP, and then how Arbonne products can be an effective part of the protocol for anyone with autoimmune disease. So I'm going to run through our panelists right now so that they can say hello to you. And our first panelist is Tracy Gaolers, and she's going to wave. And Tracy has her Bachelor of Science in Mechanical Engineering first. But after she was diagnosed with autoimmune disease, she was fortunate to find a doctor that specialized in functional medicine. And she was eventually diagnosed with Hashimoto's thyroiditis. This healing journey led her to the Arbonne 30 Days to Healthy Living program and into the world of functional diagnostic nutrition. So functional diagnostic nutrition is a methodology that's used to discover hidden opportunities, support the body through something called DRESS for health success, and that's DRESS, and help clients find their own personal definition of health. Tracy's focus is on helping professional women with Hashimoto's discover the triggers for their illness and take back the quality of their life. But she also supports clients with other autoimmune diseases as well, and she is the founder of the program, Your Health Made Simple. Our second panelist is Becky Geyer, and Becky has a Bachelor of Arts in Education, and she is a Regional Vice President and a consultant with Arbonne. Becky was diagnosed with Hashimoto's about 4 years ago, and she has a very hopeful story to share about being the advocate for your own health and your own recovery. Our third panelist is Danni Marsh, and Danni is an engineering student at Lipscomb University in Nashville, Tennessee, and a former NCAA Division I track athlete. Last year, his life came to an abrupt halt because of autoimmune disease, in particular ulcerative colitis. He will share what it's like to have an autoimmune disease and then progressing through the AIP, the Autoimmune Protocol, and how that transformed his life. Our final panelist tonight is Dr. Gladys Walter. Dr. Gladys Walter has a PhD in pharmacology. She has a Master of Science in biochemistry. I'm going to go through her pedigree here. She was born and raised in Brazil and moved to the United States in 2006. And her husband is Dr. Stephen Walter, and he's from Germany, and he's also a biochemist. They live in Ann Arbor, and at 17 years old, Gladys chose to go to pharmacy school with one dream: to learn how to extract and purify active compounds from plants. Her background's in research and teaching, and her professional background includes winning an international prize in Japan for drug discovery with a compound that was extracted from seaweed. So she was a professor of biochemistry and pharmacy for the fields of nursing, physical therapy, speech pathology, nutrition, and a dietitian. She was a coordinator of Pharmaceutical Assistance Clinic of Diabetes and Obesity. And she received her PhD in pharmacology from the University of Sao Paulo, Brazil, where her area of specialty was cancer research. and she did her postdoctoral work at Oklahoma Medical Research Foundation for infectious diseases and at the University of Michigan in neurodegenerative diseases and immunological diseases as well. So she has a lot of scientific expertise to share with us as we discuss tonight. So first and foremost, I want to ask Tracy a question. So Tracy, let's start at the beginning. As an functional diagnostic nutrition practitioner, you have counseled and walked a lot of people through autoimmune disease. What is it and why does it happen?
Thanks so much for the introduction and allowing me to be a part of this. So yes, I'm the owner of Your Health Made Simple. I live with Hashimoto's autoimmune disease, and I have the worst genetic variation of the MTHFR gene, meaning my body only detoxes at about 30%. So autoimmune is an illness that happens when the body begins to an attack on its own tissues or organs. And to have autoimmune, you have to have three things. So you have number one, a genetic propensity, number two, triggers, and number three, leaky gut. And with leaky gut, the lining of your small intestine has been compromised by stressors in the body. It's no longer behaving like the linebackers on a football team that you need it to. The cells in the lining are damaged, letting food particles and toxins through in a way that it was not intended. And your immune system has now launched an attack. So in the case of Hashimoto's, gluten is the offender, and the gluten protein is similar to the thyroid cells and brain surface tissues. So the immune system also launches an attack on those areas of the body. For other autoimmune diseases, the trigger will be different, and the organ or tissue attack is different, but it is still the same mechanism. Your genetics will determine your weak link. So about 50 million people have been diagnosed with an autoimmune disease, but it is suspected that it's as high as a third of the population, as it is sometimes so difficult to get a diagnosis, as you'll see when I get to that part. But before I dive in, let me just give you a quick bit about my story. I was an absolute poster child for unhealthy living. I burned the midnight oil. I made poor food choices. I did absolutely nothing to manage my stress. I worked myself to death between my job and being a single mom for much of my children's lives. I always exercised, and I suspected that exercise would keep me healthy, but it isn't enough to offset everything else. So by the time I was 45, I could barely make it up the steps of my home. And I finally reached a pivotal point in my health when I went home to see my grandmother one last time in July of 2012, and I ended up in the hospital myself. And that was kind of a loser move, really. But I knew that if I let them take my gallbladder, I was going to pay for it for the rest of my life. So before I let them take me to the hospital, I did 12 hours of research, and I finally went to the hospital. I would not let them do the surgery. I took the antibiotics and the painkillers, and I got myself home. Now it's been a long journey to health, but I found some help outside the current medical model that put me on a course of self-education, ownership of my own health, and actually a career change. And I realized that there's a place for the current medical model, but it's not always in chronic illness. Symptom treatment will not change the course of health ever. It only masks the dysfunction underneath, and it will continue to get worse. So something to note, just because you're not sick doesn't mean you're healthy. And as you're going to discover here in a little bit, you can make your way into illness and not even realize it. So first, let's define health. You're healthy when your body's in a state of homeostasis, meaning in a state of balance with its internal environment, which means the systems in your body have to be working the way they're supposed to, meaning that they are not compensating. And the bacteria in your body also has to be in balance. Your gut health is at the root of disease in your body, so bacteria plays a very large role in your internal environment. Now, it's suspected that only about 3% of the US population actually fits that definition of health. 10% are very, very sick, and they do need the current medical model to stay alive. 87% that are left remaining are obviously in between. So what does in between mean? It means that you're suffering symptoms and you're likely in the early stages of disease. So there are 5 stages to autoimmune disease. In the first stage, you actually have no symptoms of the disease, and the tissue or the organ that your body would attack is functioning at an optimal level. You have a genetic predisposition, meaning that if you have triggers, the the likelihood of developing autoimmune is very, very high. In the second stage, you're starting to get some of the symptoms of the disease, and your antibodies may actually register positive on a test, but the tissue or the organ results will still appear to be normal. So doctors in this stage are sometimes treating people for depression and anxiety because those are generally some of the early symptoms. And the autoimmune disease is in its early stages here. By the time you get to the third stage, the organs and the tissues begin to fail, and the results of tests would now show deviation from normal readings. So the organ or the tissue in the third stage is now really struggling, and it can no longer keep up with the autoimmune attack on the body. You are attacking your own tissues. In the fourth stage, organ or tissue is now failing dramatically, and your symptoms are getting to be extremely severe. Your lab tests are now out of range, and at this point, most doctors will prescribe medication, and it is very likely necessary at this time. You probably can't avoid it by the time you get to the fourth stage. In the fifth stage, the disease has now progressed to include additional autoimmune diseases. Once your immune system has begun to attack one organ or tissue, it's only a matter of time before it starts to attack another if you do nothing. So what can you do? What does it take to change the course of your health if you have autoimmune disease? So when I started, I was struggling, and it was a great place to start, and it did improve the way I felt, and it allowed me to save my gallbladder, but it wasn't quite enough. I had to embark on a trigger investigation and completely change the way I ate, along with improving a few other lifestyle factors. But 6 years later, I want you to know I'm still using those shake products every morning to start my day the right way because they taste better than anything else I've tried. They're extremely clean, they're awesome, and I recommend it a lot of times to my clients because the liquid nutrients are the easiest way for your body to absorb nutrients. There are actually 4 lifestyle factors that contribute to health, but diet is where I start all of my clients because it can be the most impactful to the way that you feel. I use the AIP diet, meaning the Autoimmune Protocol. The goal to healing autoimmune is an inflammation reduction so the body can begin to heal, specifically the lining of the gut, to stop the attack. So the AIP is like a paleo or an Arbonne 30 diet with additional restrictions. Inflammatory foods or potential triggering foods are eliminated, and I have seen it improve the lives of my clients that are willing to do the work. So look, the bottom line, everyone, is that your health is in your hands. And once you arrive at chronic illness, the game changes. Your body requires a lot of work on your part to get better, but it can absolutely get better. You can take back your quality of life. So I wish I had a little bit more time to chat on this, but time's limited. So I hope I've shared something with you that triggered you to take your health into your own hands. If you have Hashimoto's or another autoimmune disease, I do offer 20-minute free discussions at 100% no cost to you because it's so important to me that people get educated and learn what they can do to change the way they live their lives. And I think Teresa was going to include my information. So if it's something that you want to chat on, please don't hesitate to reach out to me, or you can find me at yourhealthmadesimple.com. So Teresa, thanks again for allowing me the time to spread the word about autoimmune, and everyone, it's been great chatting. Thank you.
Tracy, thank you so much. I mean, Tracy was pivotal in our discovery of how to progress with my son's autoimmune disorder and his disease, which he'll talk about here momentarily. And I think that the information that you provided was so easy to understand, and most of us don't even realize we're actually in the process of developing this inflammation to the level of being severely sick. And it increases our awareness so much. So inflammation, it's all about reducing inflammation. And I met Tracy through our next panelist, who is Becky Geyer. And Becky and I have been friends since college. And Becky was always really high energy. But about a couple of years ago, she found out that she was diagnosed with Hashimoto's. And it's an all too common diagnosis for women. So Becky, what started your journey with autoimmune disease?
Well, thanks for letting me share, Teresa, because really my story is just a story of hope. So about in 2014, I just started to feel different, as you noticed. At first, I realized that gluten gave me rashes, really bad itchy rashes on my elbows and knees. So I knew I needed to take that out of my diet, which was a little bit sad for me because I really love bread, but I did it. And then I started noticing other things that were going wrong with my body, like my toes and my fingers were freezing cold, and my tongue was kind of feeling swollen. And I took naps throughout the day just to get through the day. The strange thing is the outer edge of your eyebrows can start to thin. So all these things can point to a slow thyroid, which I knew was in my family history. So I decided to get tested. So I went to my general practice doctor and asked for the TSH test, and that's the only one they would run on me. And they came back and they said, "Oh, it's normal, you're fine." Well, I knew myself, you know yourself, and I knew I wasn't fine, and I was not going to let this be my new normal. So I started my own research, and I just wasn't satisfied with how things were going. So I did find a naturopath, and I told him, I'm suspecting it might be Hashimoto's thyroiditis. And so he ordered another TSH test along with some other tests like T3, T4, TPO. And if you're familiar with Hashis, you'll know that that is what you need to do to diagnose anything. Well, the results, and he says, yep, your results show you are in full-blown Hashimoto thyroiditis. Your TPO, which is your antibody count, is at 151, and 0 to 25 is normal. So he looked at my Arbonne products and gave them the approval along with being gluten-free. And I did make some improvement, but you must understand that when you have an autoimmune disease, you need to go a lot further than just simple elimination. Fortunately, that's when I met Tracy. And I talked to Tracy, and she said that she also had Hashimoto's, but she was putting hers into remission, which I had never even heard of before. We didn't know was possible. So she was also teaching other people, she said, using the Arbonne products and the Autoimmune Protocol, which is AIP for short. So after I started realizing I was more and more fatigued, I started developing anxiety for the first time ever. I just asked Tracy to coach me, and she coached me in the dress for success for health. And mostly we focused first on diet. She put me on the Autoimmune Protocol, and I followed the Paleo Approach book by Sarah Ballantyne as a guide as well. And just like the Arbonne Healthy Living Program, you need to remove those inflammatory foods first. But like I said, if you have autoimmune, you need to eliminate all inflammatory foods. And it's very strict elimination. So that includes eggs, nuts, coffee, sugars, butters, dairy, nightshades, legumes, gluten, and any kind of grain. It's really restrictive. But here's the nice thing. With Arbonne, the Healthy Living Programs, products, it was simple. Like that protein shake, seriously, was like my best friend because I literally could grab it as I went out the door and have something I could totally be on program. The probiotics helped me heal my gut. And that is, with autoimmune, is a large thing you need to do. So it was fantastic. I used the fiber, used the tea, a lot of things. And I also took natural desiccated thyroid and some vitamins that support the thyroid itself. And I also learned something fun on this. I learned how to make bread out of plantains so I could have my bread and treat myself again. So you're probably wondering what happened then. After I had been on the AIP with the Arbonne, I had a second blood test done. And when I called the doctor's office and asked the nurse to read me my results, she read off the cholesterol and the triglycerides and telling me the numbers. And she got to the antibody part and she said, and your TPO is at 81 and there's nothing you can do about that. And she began to go on and I stopped her and I said, well, actually, there is something you can do about it, because if you look at my last set of test results, you will see that I was double that number before, up at 151, and now it's 81. And she kind of paused and read the rest of the report, and we said goodbye. And a couple minutes later, my phone rang, and it was the nurse from the doctor's office asking me, how did you do that? So I went to my naturopath and I said, why is this, why are they asking me about this? And he says, because this is truly impressive. And he says, a lot of other people do the Autoimmune Protocol diet, but your results are impressive. And so I attribute his remarks to the nutritional support that the Arbonne gave me on the autoimmune program. And I believe that Autoimmune Protocol is wonderful, but with the Arbonne products included in that, it's like a winning team, total winning team. So please be your own advocate, listen to your body, listen to the symptoms you have, and do your own research and find a functional practitioner that can coach you and help you through this. And I'd like to say that although I'm not officially into remission yet, I'm very close and I'm on my way, and I hope to be soon. And here is what I can report to you is that, as Teresa said, my energy's back. My anxiety is super low. Don't have to deal with that much anymore at all. And really, my numbers show you, the numbers don't lie, that you can begin to put your body into remission when you take control of your health. So thank you for having me on. I hope this was really helpful to someone out there.
I absolutely love that, Becky. And you look gorgeous too, by the way. And I think it's so fun to surprise your doctor when you have, and we do recommend, and we're not telling you not to have a doctor. Work with your doctor, as Becky said, be your own advocate, but you know your body. And I love the fact that Arbonne's 30 Days to Healthy Living, all the products, I'm just going to say that, are all certified gluten-free. And the protein, because of the way it is processed, is actually considered grain-free as well. And that's a big thing with Autoimmune Protocol, that you want to have a completely grain-free diet. So it is, and it tastes really good, as Tracy said. There's a lot of proteins out there, it tastes horrible, but they have whey and they have soy and other things, but their protein tastes really good. So this point is where I put my mom hat on. And because our third panelist here is not only going to give a testimonial, but he's also my son, Danny. And just 10 short months ago, he returned home for Christmas break, and he was very sick, very, very sick, and a broken young man due to ulcerative colitis, which is a very common disease among young men, and Crohn's as well. So from October through December 2017, and we had seen Danny in October at school. When he came back to us in December, he had lost 50 pounds. He was in debilitating pain. He was anemic, and he had pancolitis, meaning it had spread throughout his whole colon. He could barely walk. He lost his outgoing personality. He almost became like a shut-in, and his inflammatory numbers were off the chart. So if we think about Tracy's scale, he was number 4. He was already number 4 out of 5. And then a colonoscopy showed the worst. So I'm going to let Danny take over the story from here.
Awesome. Thanks, Mom. What a sweet lady, that mother of mine. Usually she tears up talking about me, so I'm happy she didn't this time. Really good job. So yeah, I don't want to waste any of your time talking about what led up to me getting autoimmune disease. So I just want to talk about what it looks like living with autoimmune disease, and then also what it looks like making the choices to take back your health, take back your life, just little steps at a time. So like my mom said, I was a full-time student. I was studying mechanical engineering and was running Division I track and trying to have a social life at the same time that my body was breaking down on me. In March of 2017, I was diagnosed with ulcerative colitis. And basically right when I got the diagnosis is when things started going downhill really, really fast. I switched over actually to a vegan diet because I thought, I've heard that this is healthy and I'm going to give this one a shot. And so that was actually the worst thing that I could probably do for myself at that point, because it's so heavy on grains, and grains are a main killer in autoimmune disease, as you've heard over and over and over. And so I became incredibly anemic. One time when I was in Kroger, I was talking to my mom on the phone, and I had to call her because I was like, Mom, if I pass out right now, I want you to know what's going on, because I was so incredibly lightheaded. I had lost so much blood. I thought, I might just crash at any moment. I was in a ton of pain. I was in pain all the time. I was going to the bathroom 25 times a day, which included 5 times at night. I remember one time I woke up and I looked over at my roommate. It had been a rough night. I was in so much pain. I looked over at my roommate and I said, I can't do this anymore, man. I can't go on. I'd rather die. I truly wanted to die rather than keep on living, because it hurt so bad, and that's how much pain I was in. It's a really light conversation me and my roommate had. You can try that out sometime. No, he's fine. He's actually on this call right now. Hey, Sam. So I also lost 50 pounds, and things were just going horrible. I'm 6'1", and I dropped down to 133 pounds, which is not the ideal weight for somebody who is 6'1". And in December, I came home, and we decided that I can't go back to school to finish my last semester. I was just way, way, way too sick. And so living with autoimmune disease at that point meant waking up, trying to walk up the stairs. I usually had to take a break halfway up because I was so anemic. I'd fall on the couch. My mom or my dad or my siblings, they would bring me food and water because I just did not have the strength even to stand up and go to the kitchen. There's a really great picture of me sitting in front of the stove trying to cook a piece of chicken because I couldn't stand up to cook, and I just didn't have any energy to do anything at all. And that's what just every day was. It was wake up, do the exact same thing, go to doctors, do the exact same thing. My doctors ended up putting me on steroids. They put me on budesonide. They put me on prednisone, which are two hard steroids. And we had scheduled a second colonoscopy. And so when I went to go and have that second colonoscopy, the results showed that I had pancolitis, which is basically colitis that just kind of encompasses your whole colon. My inflammation was crazy. It was off the charts. My numbers were way high in inflammation. My hemoglobin and my iron levels were way low, and things were just, I was just in so much pain all the time. And so what the doctor says, like, we need to put you on biologics being Humira or Remicade, they're immunosuppressants. And I said, so if I'm on these, like, what's the timeline? What does it look like if these take and I start getting better? And they're like, well, if you start getting better, we don't usually take people off of them. It's like, this is your treatment now. And so for me, that's a life sentence. You know, I'm 23 years old. That's 60, give or take a few years. And I was going to be on them the rest of my life. I would have had to get infusions. I would have had to consistently take this drug. I would have had my immune system being suppressed, which makes me more susceptible to other diseases for my entire life. And it's just a scary thing to hear as a 23-year-old. And so I talked to Aunt Becky, which you had just heard a second ago, not my real aunt, just a little side note. And I talked to Tracy Gaolers, and they had told me about the Autoimmune Protocol. And I heard that it had done fantastic things. And so I told my doctor, yeah, there's the book. My mom's lifting it up. I told my doctor that I wanted to try this diet first. I wanted to try this protocol. And he said, well, you're insane. It's not going to work. You're just going to get sicker. We're going to have to remove your colon. We don't know what's going to happen. Your levels are going to get much, much worse. He said it very matter-of-factly. And I said, well, we'll see. And so I walked out of there not getting prescribed those biologics. And I started on the autoimmune protocol. And within the first 4 weeks, this is all it took, 4 weeks of me being on the protocol, my levels went crazy back in the normal range. I'm talking like my inflammations dropped like crazy. I was at, my calprotectin was at 1,300. It dropped to 300, which is 1,000 points. It's just remarkable. My CRP, which is the cal-reactive protein, it went from 15.4 to 2.2. And once again, it's remarkable. And then my hemoglobin, which is supposed to increase, just a little bit, it's went from 6.8 to 14. So all my levels within just 4 weeks started getting back into what we call the normal range. And it was just from making these adjustments and changing my diet, my protocol, and changing my lifestyle a little bit, prioritizing rest and prioritizing diet like I talked about. So life goes on. I keep on this diet and things start getting better and better. I was going to the bathroom 5 times a night. It went from 5 to 3 to 2 to 1. And I remember the first night I slept the whole night through. I woke up and I was like, no way, no way. I am getting my life back. I'm actually becoming healthy again. I could actually start doing things again. My first walk, so how sick I was, I could walk out to the mailbox and back. That was it. And then I could walk around the block. And then I went on my first run. And then in the summer, I started hiking 14ers. I started hiking mountains out here in Colorado. And then soon after that, in the end of August, I went to Africa for 10 days on a mission. I went to Kenya and I lived in Kenya and I did perfectly fine in Kenya. And now here I am, I'm back up, my weight has increased. I'm back up to 100 and around 78, somewhere around there. So I've gained around 40 pounds back, just over 40 pounds back. And going into the spring now, I'll be headed back to Lipscomb University to finish my degree in mechanical engineering. It's really just been this process of taking my life back when I thought, I seriously thought my life was over. I thought, I am going to die. I want to die. I don't want to continue living. And then to come out and be like, I have these ambitions of moving forward, of graduating, of traveling overseas, all these great things that I know I can do now because I've been able to take back my body and take back my life from this chronic illness. And to go along with all this, just like Tracy said, and just like Aunt Becky said, I was using a lot of the Arbonne products as well. I would use the shakes a couple times a day because, you know, foods were really hard and really heavy, solid foods. And so having something that was soft and easily digestible and also tasted fantastic is just a little bonus. It was just awesome to have those readily available. And then I also used the Full Control. Full Control is probably the biggest thing I used because I noticed when I started using Full Control, it was literally taking control back. So when you have ulcerative colitis or when you have Crohn's, you have this urgency to go to the bathroom. You have probably about 30 seconds and then you have to go to the bathroom and then everything just goes. Full Control, when I started taking it, it gave me control back. It stopped the urgency, stopped the frequency. I just noticed, oh, such incredible things when I was using that as well. And then going along with that, I used the what's it called? Mom, I can't even remember.
Digestion Plus.
Digestion Plus, that's right, the third thing. Digestion Plus. I would take that before my meals. It was a good source of probiotics and prebiotics. It was just helping heal my gut, which again is a huge thing that goes along with autoimmune disease. So yeah, I hope this can encourage you guys. I 100% say that it changed my life completely. Yeah.
Yeah, both. So interesting is your life gets changed by autoimmune and then you don't think you're ever going to feel well again. I think that's a perspective a lot of people with autoimmune disease have. And so to see Danni make this kind of progress, I mean, he started right before March Madness. And after 4 weeks, his GI, who basically told him, I'm going to take out your colon one day, said, wow, you've made remarkable progress. And if Danni, who's 23 years old, can talk to a doctor and say, I want to try this, and the doctor will say, okay, certainly any one of you can say, I want to try this. Because he's a young man and usually not given a whole bunch of respect by the physician who says, it's my job to help you get better. No, we're partnering in helping me get better. So that's great. Thank you, Danni, so much for sharing. Our last panelist tonight is Dr. Gladys Walter. And I first met Dr. Walter at the home of a mutual friend. And we were actually looking at some Arbonne products. And we opened up a bag and she looked inside and she said, this product impresses me. You can tell that it is very well made just by looking at the product. And she said, the first scoop and the last scoop will both be effective because the product is so thoroughly made. She had full confidence in it. And she was excited about that, which as a researcher, that was super exciting to her. So 2 terms that you're going to hear her get very excited about again as a researcher tonight are Bacillus coagulus and glucomannon. Did I say that right, Gladys?
Yes, correct.
Okay. So with your background in immunology, autoimmune disease, and please share with us why you're a proponent of Arbonne products as part of the protocol and what you know about autoimmune disease and how to confront it.
Yeah, so hi to all of you. It's such a great pleasure to be with all you tonight. And when you first listen to other people talk about their own experience in autoimmune disease, so it prepares me, it makes me happier to talk about the product and why I recommend 2 of them, the Full Control and the Digestion Plus. So when you're working in drug discovery and development, how I did for most of my life, and you know that particularly in the field of immune disorders, you are facing something very complex because you are dealing with the immune system that it's very complex by itself. So in general, you want to minimize the attack to the tissue or organ that has been affected by the disease. But the point is that in immune disorders, in many of these diseases, they still don't know exactly which molecule is the key biological target. So can you imagine that we still don't know in most of these diseases who is the target? If you don't know who is the target, if you don't know who the target is, so what is the strategy for the treatment? So for most of them, what is offered for the patient, it's basically a combination of medicines that aim to avoid the fast development of the disease, and at the same time to minimize the attack to the tissue. And third front is to reduce the inflammation. It may be an option to be considered to take all these medicines at first moment, but if you think at a long term, you may be flipping, I would say, flipping the biological coin. What it means that when you flip the coin, what is on the other side? And on the other side may be the development of cancer. Because every time you suppress your immune system, you're telling him or it, don't recognize anything else. So most of the cells that suffer deletions, differentiations, they are then they can develop into different kinds of cancer. And the first time I met with Teresa, I still remember, and I'm always excited every time I open a new full control, for example. And she asked me to talk a little bit about what we see that's so special in our products. And it's the quality. When you open a full control, a package of the fiber, or even the protein shake, you see that the grains, they are homogeneous. You may think, oh, this is craziness, but it's not. In terms of technology, it's very important so that, for example, in full control, all these particles, these fibers will assemble in the correct way. And then you have a good absorption of water in that fiber. And also it will absorb glucose and cholesterol that are normally in very high level when you have immune disorders. So I think I answered your questions, right, Teresa? About the quality, yes. So she also asked me, Gladys, could you please explain how do you take Digestion Plus and full control? So I'm going to show you something that's very practical, very easy to do. When you take the Digestion Plus, you know that you are using a very smart product in terms of formulation. So what you are going to do is that you are taking just one stick of the product, you are going to open, and you're going to pour it here in the water. How much of water? You just need this amount of water. It should be half glass or less. And you just do that and you drink it at once. When can you take it? You take it any time of the day, any time. We normally suggest for who is doing the 30 days to healthy living to take early in the morning when you wake up. It's okay, but it doesn't matter. Why you can take to any time? Because the 11 enzymes that are here inside of the product, as soon as they find the food, the substrate, they are going to be active depending on the pH of our stomach. And then they are going to increase the speed of all chemical reactions. So in short, in summary, what we are doing is that we are speeding up the digestion process. So if you have food that was sitting like 2-3 days there in your colon, with full control, with Digestion Plus, you are going to process this food until you have small particles, and the nutrients will be then absorbed. The other thing that's very important is that we have the Bacillus coagulans here. It's the probiotic, and Bacillus coagulans is the most, it's one of the most important microorganisms that inhabit the gut. But the important thing is that when you go to the grocery store, most of the probiotics, they need to be refrigerated. Have you ever thought that ours comes in a pack? So theoretically, it is alive but not active. As soon as you take it, and as soon as it reaches the pH of the stomach, this bacillus is alive. So it's amazing because I travel a lot. So wherever I go, all over the US or the world, I can just take one of these sticks and carry with me. It's active. It doesn't depend on refrigeration. And the third thing is that the Bacillus coagulans can reach the gut, but it needs to form more colonies. It needs to live there in a very good environment. So that's why we have the chicory, that it's part of the formulation. So the chicory, some people say, oh, it's a kind of carbohydrate. I don't want a sugar here. But no, we are not going to use that carbohydrate. This is used by C. coagulans, so they can procreate and have more generations in our gut. And I think I answer most of the questions about Digestion Plus. So now I go to my #1 favorite product ever. That is the Full Control. Full Control has been studied for a couple of years already. It has been used for centuries in Asia. And what we know is that the glucomannon, that's the compound that is in the product right here, it's food. What it has been recently discovered is that when you take the Full Control alone, you add in, when you scoop in the water also this amount, and you drink it 30 minutes before you eat, before your meal, this fiber that's soluble is going to assemble in a way that when it goes through our digestive tract, it will absorb part of the cholesterol and the glucose of your diet that is coming in 30 minutes. So it's very important that you don't mix with anything else. You cannot add Full Control in your shake. Why you cannot? Because most of the good nutrients from your foods will be trapped into the fiber and will be disposed. So you are losing most of the benefits from your protein shake, for example. And why it's so important for people with autoimmune disorder that cause inflammation in the gut, in the colon. What has been published is that the fiber forms a film along the colon, and it induces the formation of a new membrane. So at the same time, it stops the leaking. And with the formation of new membrane, your body understands. The immune system receives a sign that it has to stop to attack the colon, because there's a new membrane, everything is doing well there. And that's why people, I have many clients that report that, oh, I feel so good, I feel so well when I take the full control. So what's the magic? So there is no magic. There is a science behind of the product. And I'd like to thank you very, very much for the opportunity that you're giving me to explain a little bit about these products. And if you have any questions, you can send me or send to Teresa, and I'll try to answer all the questions in a good time. Thank you.
Thank you, Gladys, for your scientific insight. I mean, to know that we have a product right here that can really, really benefit people with their leaky gut, and it seems to be hidden away. And some of us might have it at home and we're like, hey, I bought this years ago, but now I realize it's really important for gut health. It's amazing, the information you shared. And I credit that to your background and all of your training, that you were able to explain that so well to us. And as you have said many times, really, the choice is yours. You can take whatever your doctor says and prescribes to you and live your life just making minor changes in your diet, or you can make major changes in your diet, and then whatever your doctor has prescribed can become the small part, and maybe even the I've eliminated it part, I don't need it anymore part. So that I love that. We can be advocates for our own health, and we can help you with our program and our support groups. We have support groups in Arbonne for our 30 Days to Healthy Living. They start the first and third Monday of every month. And the person who invited you on this call can really help you get connected with these products and to get on this program, because it's about reducing inflammation. So you might be at step number 1 in the program, or in the chart that Tracy talked about, or you might be in step number 4, and you need to really be a lot more strict with your diet. You really need to implement not only Arbonne 30 Days to Healthy Living, but even beyond that to the Autoimmune Protocol, which is much more strict. And this book by Dr. Sarah Ballantyne, called The Paleo Approach, is where you would start. It is a science textbook that you will understand what's going on with your body. So that's the person you want to connect with. If you want a counseling session, if you're really needing more information, yes, connect with Tracy and get a consult with her. Post some questions here. But I just really want to emphasize that this call is about education. Take this information to your doctor. Talk with your doctor about it. Most doctors don't have a lot of nutritional training. So you're going to be getting with them and maybe even saying, hey, I want to do this. I want to try it. I don't like how things are going. I realize now I am a lot sicker than I thought I was. I want to turn this around because I don't feel good. So this call is about education so that you and your doctor can work together for your benefit. So I want to thank Tracy Gaoler for sharing. I want to thank Dr. Gladys Walter for sharing her knowledge with us as well. And thank you to Becky and Danni for being willing to be vulnerable and share your stories with us. So we want to encourage you in your walk with autoimmune disease, or someone, a loved one in your life as well. And thank you so much for joining us on this call tonight. We really appreciate you taking the time to tune in and listen to us. And we hope you have a wonderful evening. And we say good night now. We're all done.